that everyone else has. So the recording has started. I will introduce myself. Lisa Helps. I'm the executive lead of BC Builds, and happy to be here today with my colleague Ali and Dave Freeman from Kamloops. Who, Dave, I'm going to ask you to turn on your camera for just a moment because we're going to want you to share a bit of information about the site. So where's Dave?
Come on.
There's Dave. Okay, perfect. Excellent. So the purpose of today's session is to give everyone a brief overview of the process that we're involved in with these land opportunities. And then, and I will do that. And then I'll hand it over to Dave and he will give just a very high level, everything's in the property opportunity notice, but anything that he might want to highlight for all of you. And then really we want to save most of the time, 50 minutes or more. So we'll talk for 10 and then we'll wrap it up, maybe not even that much, to give the rest of the time for all of you to ask questions about this opportunity, about this site, and anything else you need to know in order to put proposals together. So I will start by just walking you through, just give me a minute here to share my screen. Where we are in this process. And this is all up on our website as well, but just to let you know. So we're at this point in the process right here where we've posted zone land on the site. This is what we're looking at today. There's a piece of zone land in Kamloops. We're looking for your proposals, and once we receive your proposals, a joint evaluation committee from BC Builds and Kamloops will evaluate your proposals and select a successful proponent. Once that happens, we'll ask the successful proponent to sign what we're calling a conditional land contribution letter. And this will be signed between BC Builds, Kamloops, and the successful proponent. And that will lay out all the conditions that each of us have to undertake and meet in order to get the project to construction in 12 to 18 months. And really, this is key. BC Builds is a More Homes Faster program, not just a More Homes program. And so in that year period, and this is a relatively straightforward site, so we would probably say 12 months, 18 months is for more complex sites. In that year period, BC Builds will look to provide the funding and financing for the project. Kamloops will expedite the development permit and building permit, and then the developer builder will do everything necessary to get the development permit, building permit, and everything else in line for construction. So that's where we go from here. In terms of the way that we're going to evaluate these proposals, I believe I've got the Kamloops opportunity up here. So you should be able to see this property opportunity notice. We're not going to go through it in detail now, but just to outline for all of you the criteria that we're going to be looking at. I'll make it a bit bigger here. So we're going to assess, is the applicant eligible? Are you meeting the target household incomes? Are you demonstrating that you've got property management experience? Are you demonstrating that you've got development experience? And each of those is outlined in detail in this document that you can download on the website. So if the answer to all of these things is yes, then we will evaluate your proposal. And I just want to point out the emphasis that we're putting on these proposals. So BC Builds does not provide an ongoing operating subsidy to buildings, so they need to be able to carry themselves and carry the costs of the mortgage and operating with the rents that are charged. So we're looking to award 20% or 20 points to the financial viability and sustainability. We can provide, when a building is owned and operated by a nonprofit, we can provide up to $225,000 per unit, but we're trying to look for proposals that don't require that full subsidy. So there's points for that. We're aiming for 20% of units at 20% below market, but if you can do better, there are points for that. We're aiming to target the household incomes to the BC Builds targets, which are laid out in the program framework, which we highly suggest you read. And if he can do better than that, we can award points for that. And then really one of the key criteria is speed to market. So the time that we get these projects, select the successful proponent to the time that they are under construction and to the time that they're occupied, counts for 15 points. The other each are only worth 5%, and I won't go into those in detail. So I guess one thing, this is our second info session now, one thing that came up as a question in the last info session, which I'll share now, is that these are, BC Builds is essentially a rental supply program. It's not an affordable housing program. It's not a subsidized housing program. The objective is to provide housing to working people across British Columbia. And so the BC Builds formula, and again, you'll see this when you read through the property opportunity notice and the program framework, 80% of units are meant to be at market rents for the region or area. So in this case, Kamloops, and 20% of units at 20% below market. So we're really targeting middle income households. So that's kind of an overview of BC Builds. Dave, I'm going to hand it over to you and see if there's anything you'd like to share or emphasize, and maybe clarify about the Kamloops opportunity. And before Dave talks, I'm just going to ask everybody who's not muted to please mute yourselves. We've got a lot of people on this call and we don't want to have any background noise. So if you could do that, that would be great. Dave, over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. And I'm joined today with our current planning manager, Eric Beach, because there's hopefully questions that'll come up specific to the development, and these I'm going to look to answer those questions. Thank you all for registering and attending. This is kind of a unique opportunity because it's a partnership with the Kamloops Community Land Trust. So last year, July 2023, the City of Kamloops incorporated a nonprofit housing society whose purpose is to provide housing opportunities for low to moderate income residents of Kamloops. We're not affiliated with any service agencies. And as a nonprofit housing provider, we're also not tied into municipal procurement requirements. And as many of you will know on this call, when you have to do business with a municipality, it can be very onerous and have a lot more hoops than some of you in the development industry would say are really required. So by looking for a partner, and in this case, we're actually looking, I would say this is more of a true joint venture initiative. One of the things about BC Builds and with the support of Lisa, there is a focus on innovation. There is a focus on speed to market. We think having the land trust involved in this process and the way the society is set up at this point in time, it's actually controlled by senior city staff. So we have a direct connection through to city council on approvals. We have direct connection to my good friends up in the planning department. So when we start talking about expediting approvals, for those of you not familiar with Kamloops, 12 to 18 months, if it took us that long to get from concept to approval on applications, I don't think both Eric and I would be in this call. We take pride in expediting housing applications that are complete applications, and they come in, and especially as we do have a policy that says our affordable housing projects go to the front of the line, and I would lobby to get the same sort of consideration for the BC Builds project. So on the evaluation, we're looking for a developer builder, somebody who can bring a consulting team to the table, deliver the product at the end of the day, design the product. We're looking to see how to formalize a relationship with a developer builder. The Community Land Trust is an initiative that is gaining a lot of momentum. We're seeing a lot more of them across Canada, and we're hoping to see more of them in actually BC as a way to do this. So with the support of BC Builds, we're looking at different ways to deliver the product. So we would be putting a lot of emphasis on So by having a joint venture relationship, we want a developer builder who's got a vested interest in the outcome. Of course, the fees that are charged, the construction that's charged, it all goes through the quantity surveyor. It's all vetted through BC Housing. But we want somebody in the game that actually um, has a vested interest in the outcome. And that's why we're looking out to the private sector and to get you as a developer partner interested. There is an opportunity to hold real estate at the end of the product, end of the project. What that looks like will be determined through the submissions. But the Tranquille project is most likely 6-story wood frame construction, ground level commercial. We do have the parking requirements. Eric can assist on those or direct you to where those have to be. This is market housing. So we're going to look at fit and finish package that is reflective of that. These rents are not, as Lisa said, targeted at supportive or low income. These are market rents, and so the fit and finish will be a market product. You'd have to be, of course, new home warranty registered. And then that's just looking at my notes on this and what the offering is. That's sort of the stuff that is outside of the normal. Oh, and the other thing is we'd be looking at the city will lease this land to the community land trust for 60 years. So we'll have a registrable interest, a financeable interest. And then if the successful proponent was looking for a piece of the deal at the end, that would be through leasehold strata plan, which we've done a number of those in Kamloops. We're looking at potentially you would then have two property owners look at a strata and hopefully have a go out for a competitive bid on a property manager. So as a developer, you don't need to bring a property manager to the table. We have a number of certified property management firms in town that could handle that end of the project.
Okay, perfect, Dave. Thank you. And just one point of clarification for everyone. This is a really unique opportunity that Kamloops is putting forward. And when you're building your pro formas to submit for this project, if you are a private entity that's going to have that leasehold strata with the community land trust basically owning half the building and your private company owning half the building, when you're building your pro forma, only calculate those grants. The per unit grant is only applicable for the nonprofit owned portion of the building. So we're not making grants to private developers. We are making grants to the community land trust. So if however you're coming as a nonprofit and want to be the leasehold interest owner of the other half of the strata, then you can factor in those per unit grants. So I think Kamloops is open to having a private partner or a nonprofit partner, unless I'm wrong. Dave, is that correct? You're open to either?
Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
on the airspace, if when you look at the evaluation of the equity and the financial, what the pro forma looks like, there is a standard industry standard construction management fee. There's an industry standard development fee that basically everybody in this call has submitted when they're going to the bank, and the bank says yes, that's reasonable. And then the piece of real estate available on the end could be could be the commercial space, could be some units, could be a lot of units. And I think when we're looking at the financial competitiveness, it will be what is your ask? What are you comfortable with?
And Dave, one more question for you before we turn it over to others. If there were people on this call who just wanted to build it, develop it, build it, and hand the whole thing over to the Kamloops Community Land Trust, are you open to that, or are you just wanting, or is that joint venture piece really key?
The joint venture piece is an opportunity.
Got it. Okay.
That would hopefully bring the total project cost down, because you don't have to take my developer and construction partners on the other end of the call. You don't have to take all your piece out at the front end. You can have an ongoing cash flow coming in. And so in order to, and this is our conversation going back, Lisa, we want to be as competitive as possible. And we want to ensure that, I mean, ultimately, this is all tax dollars coming from various pots. We're getting the best bang for the buck. So that's an opportunity that's available if you want to go down that path. If you just want to do, design build, absolutely. If that gets us the best project for the best price, the Community Land Trust wants to stay in this deal. We're looking to create an entity in Kamloops that is self-sustaining. We'll look at the cash flow coming out of the 60, 70, 80 units we can get on the site once we get through all the debt service, once we get through the replacement reserve requirements, to actually having some opportunity to build some sustainability into the Kamloops Community Land Trust.
Perfect. All right. That's all from Dave and I. It was a little bit more back and forth than anticipated, but hopefully that really clarifies the opportunity that's in front of all of you. And now we're looking for your questions. You can put them in the chat if you don't want to raise your hand and speak up, or you can raise your hand and speak up. Either is just fine. So we've got the next 40 minutes. Yeah, Frank and then Dute.
Yeah, just quickly, do I understand that the tenure, the nature of the ownership is only going to be a 60-year lease?
Yes.
So the developer, if they were your joint venture partner,
Yep.
would own, let's say they elected to do a deal where they took half of the strata units and you took half. You would each only own it for 60 years.
That's correct.
Okay. So my next question is, what financing is available through BC Build?
Yeah, great question. So BC Builds considers anything more than a 60-year lease mortgageable interest. So we can provide construction financing, grants to the nonprofit portion of the building, and then takeout financing as well. The takeout financing is available again only on the nonprofit side. For for-profits, for that portion, you could apply. Probably the best bet would be MLI Select, and 60-year lease is considered ownership by CMHC as well. We have all of our financing rates, both current and projected, up on the Housing Development Opportunities page. So when you're building your pro formas, you could go and look at those to see what the rates are. So takeout financing available on the nonprofit side, MLI Select probably your best bet on the for-profit side, and then we could interim construction finance the whole building at again below market financing rates, which are up on the site. Hopefully that helps, Frank.
It does, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Dute. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Again, I am a representative of a consortium of builders, developers, construction company, and property management. So we have everything. And based out of BC and Alberta. And the developers have skyscrapers. So now what I'm wondering, when you say market value, considering that there's a flux with the market value across the province and across the country. Now we're talking BC. So the market value in the GVRD would not be the same market value as in Kamloops. And even the below market value in the GVRD would not be the same, would not be a reflection of what there would be in Kamloops. So I'm just wondering what kind of what would be looking at as far as market value in Kamloops in comparison to the GVRD?
Dave may be able to answer that specifically for Kamloops, but what we would request is that you do an appraisal of market rents. Like that, that's how to determine market for a region or for a city, is what is an appraisal of comparable rents. So any real estate appraiser can do that quite easily. So that's how BC Builds measures market, is an appraisal of rents in the city where the building's being built. But I
Okay.
don't know, Dave, do you have any more insight in terms of what, I don't know if you want to kind of guess at market rent, because we want people to build their proposals based on reality, but I don't know if you've got any
Yeah.
more insight on that.
I do have some research. I don't have it at my fingertips right now when we were looking at our earlier opportunities. But is there an opportunity, Lisa, to post answers to these questions after our session?
Yeah, we can, yeah, absolutely we can, but I'd rather that each proponent does their own assessment of market, like
Okay.
market rents using an appraiser, because that's how we would measure anyway. So that we would request an appraisal of rents. But yeah, if there are other questions that need to be answered as follow-up, yes, but I think that one, let's follow the BC Builds approach to assessing market rents in an area.
Okay. Yeah, that answers my question. I didn't know if you already had that status quo already presented. So great. Thank you for answering that question.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions that people have? And it's your opportunity to ask anything while you've got us here before you go to the trouble of putting together proposals for this opportunity.
Question, if nobody else has one right now, there's no limit on the amount of proposals regardless of the amount of projects that there are. So we could submit a proposal for each project, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. If you would like to do that, you're welcome to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Cody, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious what the submission requirements are for June 28th. Are you looking for a full design, full price turnkey? This is a developer builder submission. So a lot of the criteria that we went over is going to be on the operator's side. The developer builder would likely just be submitting a price for their piece and maybe, you know, what they might want to retain for the commercial space. What are you actually looking to be submitted by the developer builder on the 28th? It's not totally clear to me.
Yeah, if you take a look at the property opportunity notice, I'm just going to see if I can bring it back up here. So on number 5, applicants can prevent their submission in the format of their choice. So what we're looking for is a development schedule and typical schematic design that includes drawings and site concept plan, including massing, renderings, basic floor plans, and an indication of how the building is located on the property. Total submission should include no more than 20 pages. And obviously, as part of that, we want to see a budget. So number 5 kind of lays out our expectation. And that's in the property opportunity notice for Kamloops.
Okay, so you're just looking for a budget. This is not like a turnkey fixed price that you're looking for at this stage?
Correct, absolutely. Yeah, good question. The tendering would come much later in the process. The tendering would come after development permit and once you're on your way to building permit.
So a budget rather than a business, excuse me.
Sorry, Cody, were you finished?
Yeah, well, that answers my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, and everything's there. Download the property opportunity notice and particularly download the BC Builds program framework. We wanted to try and make everything as clear and transparent as possible. We're holding these info sessions because it's a great opportunity for the cities to pitch their project and for people to ask questions. Our hope is that everything people need to put a submission is up there, but if not, you can always email info@bcbuildshomes.ca afterwards, and Alistair will put that into the chat. Jim, I'm going to come to you, and actually, Dave, I'll go to you first because you're on this with me, and then Jim, I'll come to you, and then there's a question in the chat that I'll go to next.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base on the unit mix. And Kamloops is one of the first cohorts that received the provincial housing targets. And just so when you're considering your proposal, we have a target of 62% as studios and 1 bedrooms, 18% of units as 2 bedrooms, and 20% as 3 bedrooms. So in the and I think it's in the rental framework. They talk about doing a housing needs assessment to make sure the application fits. But our breakdown is basically 60-20-20. And I would think the closer we can get to meeting those provincial targets, the more favorable we'd look at the unit mix.
Thanks, Dave. That's a really great point. Yeah, so to prevent everyone or to save everyone from going and reading through the housing needs assessment from Kamloops, which is mentioned in the BC Builds program framework, 60-20-20 for unit mix. That's really great to put that out there here. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry if it's in the opportunity notice, but does it say how the lot is going to be left? Is it going to be a clean, flat site? You know, all the mitigation done for everything?
Yeah, we're in the process of completing the demo. We have to pull out it's about a third or 25% basement. There'll be we have an obligation to do a quick archaeological assessment. The original indicators are that that's going to go quite quickly, in the fact that it's disturbed. We don't see any issues with it. We haven't done a geotech, although I can advise there's, across the street is 6-story with a concrete parking structure. In behind 346 Campbell, which is a BC housing project, they would have done their geotech. So we haven't got that completed, but we're thinking it would be favorable. Basically, 346 Campbell is on the other side of a 6-meter lane from this property. So I don't see any huge changes in the soil conditions.
Yeah, and the geotech and any other kind of analysis that would need to be done would happen in that interim period between signing the conditional land contribution letter and construction. Geotech analysis is one of the requirements that we have for financing, so that would need to come. But yeah, the site will be cleared and ready for development. And Dave, it's serviced, right?
That's correct. Yeah, it's full municipal services. There's Tranquille on the front of the site. There's 6 and 12-inch water lines within the street. There's a new 10-inch that's coming up the lane. So plenty of water. We've got, unique to this site, 3 sanitary lines running down the lane at the rear. Drainage system is in the street. The only question that did come up, and for those of you who have worked in Kamloops, is you have to get on the blower really quick with hydro. Although if you think what the load was, it was a 52-unit hotel with 2 effectively nightclubs in it. So it was pulling a pretty good sized load off of Tranquille, but that's the one thing that'll be specific to your building. And the hotel had elevators in it, so
Okay, Dute, I'm going to go to a question in the chat, and then I'll come back to Jim, and then I'll come to you. So, question in the chat: in terms of amenity space with this property, will there be consideration given to incorporating services such as childcare, etc., into the design? Dave, I'll turn that over to you.
yeah, childcare was an interesting conversation we had, in that our focus on the Community Land Trust at this stage on this project was on housing. And one of the issues about childcare is that they also have parking requirements. And anytime I have to have a car, it impacts the amount of building I can build. We weren't making that a requirement. And if a proponent wanted to include that, they could show how it would impact it. But our focus, and the focus of BC Builds, is to get units on the market in an accelerated manner. So we did not make childcare a requirement.
Yeah, and just to be clear, there are no points awarded for additional amenities, just in the scoring criteria. Jim's put a question in the chat. Actually, sorry, Dute, I'll go to you because I said I would, and then I'll come to Jim's question in the chat.
Actually, go with Jim's question first and come back to me, if you would, please.
Sure. So the question is, are there specific parking requirements we need to take into account for the proposal?
And I'm
So
going to look to Eric.
I was going to look to Eric too. Eric, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. We are currently reviewing all our parking through incorporating the new provincial legislation. So in this particular area, it's close to transit. We're going to be reducing parking under what the current bylaw states. So if you're building a studio in this corridor, it would be 0.5 per unit. And for any other unit, 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, it's 0.75 per unit is what the parking would be. Commercial would still be looking at it if you have multiple tenants on the ground floor. It's a 3 per 100 calculation, 100 meters squared gross leasable area. On top of that, I guess you can also have commercial or residential amenities on the ground level, but you need to have commercial on the Tranquille corridor, some sort of commercial component, and it can be a combination of residential amenities with the commercial amenities as well. So you'd be looking at parking for commercial and whatever your unit breakdown is. But we are looking at having those new regulations in place by the end of June, beginning of July.
So, and Eric, just a follow-up question. Are the new regulations the 0.5 for studio and the 0.75 for 1, 2, and 3, or are those the existing regulations?
No, those are the proposed regulations.
Okay,
existing regulations.
Let's not go with existing, because
Yeah.
I mean, you want to see
change,
proposals.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You want to see, just for clarity, when people are figuring the parking for their proposals, which are due at the end of June, 0.5 for a studio and 0.75 for a 1, 2, or 3. I think that answers Parm's question, which was next, but bigger units, more parking will be required, as we know. But the question is there any parking variance allowed? So those are already pretty low, what you're proposing to drop to. But I guess the question is, should a proposal come forward that looks excellent, would the city be willing to consider a parking variance as part of the development permit application process?
Yeah, it all depends on how big the variance. You can go up to 10% currently for a cash in lieu payment to reduce the parking standards. That isn't changing, but what will be changing is probably the price for each stall that you don't meet. Currently, it's at $6,000, and we're still kicking around $20,000 would be for a stall that if you don't meet it. This isn't a social housing project, correct? I'm just getting that confirmation from you, Dave.
That's correct. This is,
Yeah,
and it's
market.
Where this becomes interesting is, you know, the question from Parm. This is market targeted at market housing, and you still have to appeal to the market. And if you're charging the rents that are available to be charged, there's a high probability and likelihood that there will be vehicles associated with those tenants. So it still has to have some appeal. And I don't think Kamloops has got to the point where, you know, this is not the west end of Vancouver, where you're lucky to get a parking stall within 4 or 5 blocks if you get there early.
Okay, perfect. That's helpful. Dute, did you have another question?
Yes. Is there a preference? I presume there's preference shown towards long-term businesses in development, construction, and property management proposals. Am I led to be correct with that presumption?
So I guess maybe I'll rephrase the question to make sure I understand it. So as outlined earlier, we'll be looking for, basically eligibility is based on having demonstrated capacity in the construction sector and building sector, and having demonstrated capacity as an operator if you're putting forward an operator. So though we're not scoring those are basically qualification criteria that your company needs to have a track record based on what's laid out in the property opportunity notice to be considered an eligible applicant.
Yes. Well, fortunately they're all all developers, construction and property management and builders are over 30, 40 years in Canada. So just thought I would ask. Thank you, Brian, for that answer.
You're welcome. Paul, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Just a very quick question on parking. Sorry to bring it back to that. Do you need any chargers in that mix? Vehicle charging, electric vehicles?
They need to be EV capable. So the ducting work needs to be in place in that parkade, but you don't need to actually provide level 2 chargers, but the capability that it is there. So no one has to go back in and retrofit that, which is the big cost. So.
Okay, thank you.
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, considering that, again, we are in a flux with power in BC, providing power, and we're going to move into an electrification future. We don't have enough power for the vehicles that we have right now that are electrified. Although we're slowing down with the electric vehicles and we're increasing hybrids because we just can't maintain it with electric vehicles. And the dam that is built in the interior, Site C Dam, still doesn't provide enough power for the province of BC. And we're talking about increasing electrification here also. And included that we have buildings with cars plugged in there, homes, and we're renting power right now monthly to provide BC right now. And even the Site C Dam is not even operational yet. And even when it is, we still don't have enough power. So we're still going to be renting power. What is the projected outlook for that with the electrification aspect, considering that we're in a flux right now with having enough power to provide for the province? And while we're going towards electrification and renewable and reducing emission control, and for our carbon footprint. Any feedback on that?
No, that's beyond the scope of this submission request. It's a big question, but not relevant here.
Okay.
We'll follow the local government's guidelines.
Thank you.
There is a question in the chat from Brendan, from Parm to Brendan. So I don't know, maybe I'll read, but
Sorry.
Can you please let us know what you see the trend is? Do you see the demands of 3 bedrooms? So I don't know, Brendan, do you want to answer that? Or is that one of your team members kind of thinking they're in a different chat with you?
That's kind of putting me on the spot, and yeah, I'll probably just defer on that one for right now.
Okay, perfect. But just want to reemphasize what Dave shared earlier. So BC Builds is based on the program. BC Builds is based on meeting the housing needs in communities, and the province has asked each community across the province to do a housing needs assessment. And what Kamloops housing needs assessment shows is that they need 60%. I'm just going to round, Dave, because you did 60% studios and 1 beds, 20% 2 beds, and 20% 3 beds. So when you're thinking about your proposals and meeting the housing needs in Kamloops, I think those are the kinds of things that I've heard from the municipality that are important to focus on. Okay, sorry, Brendan, to call you out there, but good, very, very graceful approach. All right. Anyone have other comments, questions? Oh, sorry. One more thing I'll say while your minds are churning. We had a request in an earlier info session to have this video emailed out to all of you who have attended. So we will do that to make sure that you can review this as you're preparing your submissions. This video will also be posted on the website so that people who weren't able to attend are able to look at it as they're preparing their submissions. And then if there are any additional questions that come in, you can send them to info@bcbuildshomes.ca. And if there's anything that wasn't covered off here, we will amend the property opportunity notice with an update so that everyone has access to the same information. If it's a question that was already asked here, we're just going to refer you or others back to the video. Okay, another question from Jim. Is the 60-year lease term set in stone, or is that negotiable? Dave, over to you.
The 60-year term is for the all intents and purposes, is set in stone. This is a municipal property. It was acquired by the taxpayers of Kamloops. The demolition was paid for by the taxpayers of Kamloops, and it will revert back to them via the Community Land Trust in 60 years. It's a way, my other hat is I'm the real estate manager with the city. It is a way that we can package this and present it in a way that it's seen as a win, that we're not just throwing those costs away. And by the Community Land Trust holding the real estate, when somebody says, well, and if you are local, you know it's been a topic of conversation. You spent all this money to purchase the property and demolish it. What are you getting for it? Well, what we want to be able to hold is 60 units of real estate. So for the community investment, that's the return. So that's why, and our city council is comfortable with that because that is the length of lease that we've entered into on BC housing projects as well. So it's something that we've seen as a precedent, and it works, and it's a mortgageable interest. And the other aspect when we were putting this together is we're really not seeing a large equity requirement from the developer builder as a partner. So that's why we went with the 60 years.
And just for context, I believe most of the other opportunities that have been posted by local governments are also 60 years. Some are longer and some are negotiable, but it does, I guess, seem short compared to 99 years, but it's relatively standard from a land lease point of view when working with a public sector funder and financer. Okay, and then a follow-up question, what happens at the end of 60 years? Dave, is there an opportunity to extend? Jim, I feel like I'm your voice.
What am I going to be doing 60 years from now? Well, is there an opportunity to extend? I think the Kamloops Community Land Trust is going to be asking the same question. At this point in time, I wouldn't count on it, but we have a few minutes. We have a couple of projects in Kamloops that are on 99-year leases, and they were financeable and mortgageable. And when you get to, I don't know, 75, 80, 85 years into that 99-year lease, and you can't sell a unit because you can't put financing on it, something has to happen. What is that something at this point in time? We're going to leave that up to future generations to solve.
Thank you. Yeah, really good question. All right, we still have a bit of time. All right, here's another question. Does Kamloops have any site investigation reports available for the site, i.e. geotechnical, site survey, environmental? Dave?
Yeah, we do have the site survey. We haven't done any environmental, and as mentioned earlier, we haven't done geotech yet.
Okay, if you could send over the site survey afterwards to myself, we'll add it to the property opportunity notice, and it can be posted as an appendix there so everyone can take a look at it. All right. Are we good? Any last call for questions, thoughts, anything you need to know as you mull over putting a proposal together for this site? Okay, so just a reminder that this proposal call closes on June 28th. Submissions should be emailed to info@bcbuildshomes.ca. You don't need to memorize that or write it down because it's just about everywhere in the property opportunity notice and on the site and elsewhere. You're meant to base your submissions on what's publicly available, what's been shared today, and any updates we provide to the property opportunity notice. If you do have follow-up questions, please send them to that info@bcbuildshomes.ca address. That way we're a clearinghouse for questions and make sure that everybody who is interested has access to the answers. So don't go to the municipality. We want to make sure that we're making this a fair and transparent process so that everything will be within reason. Again, we will get lots of questions from people who did not attend today, and we'll direct them to the video. We're not going to update the property opportunity notice because this video is meant to serve as part of the procurement process. But if you do have questions and the answers are relevant to everyone, we'll make sure that the property opportunity notice is reposted on the site. And on the site itself, you'll see that it says updated once, for example, Dave sends through that site survey information. So yeah, I think with that, unless anyone has any final questions, thoughts. Okay, Dave, anything you wanted to say in closing?
Only this is different. And the reason it's different is the Kamloops Community Land Trust is trying to do something different. We have, I'm not supposed to say exactly, but more than 6 and less than 8 properties in the city that have been identified. We are going out, we're getting our new community board in place. The city of Kamloops, our council has made a very strong commitment to addressing the housing crisis in Kamloops. So while BC Builds may have a term certain availability, they may be available in 5-10 years, or the program may run its course in 2 years. The Kamloops Community Land Trust has got land and will be looking for opportunities moving forward.
Perfect. All right. Well said, Dave. Thank you everyone for attending. And we will look for your proposals at the end of June.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.